Hey guys, welcome in. Cube Show, college football podcast, usually coming to you on Sundays. Our guest could not record on Sunday, so we pushed it back an extra day. It actually wasn't my fault this time. So blame it on Josh Pate, who's going to join us. Awesome conversation about the college football playoff that he and I actually already had. We want to try to recreate because we both sat there at the end of it and said, why is this not on tape for all of our listeners to hear? We're going to try to do that for you. As you know, we're brought to you by Wickles Pickles, wickedly delicious. We have them in the house. We snack on them. We love them. Find them in your grocery store. Find recipes on their Instagram page at Wickles Pickles. Find your restaurant locally that has Wickles Pickles on some of their menu items and just go with those. If you don't have them, go to wicklespickles.com. They'll drop ship them to you. You can get them there. Please support them. They support us. Title sponsor of the show. We love Wickles Pickles. All right, I'm not going to waste any time. Let's get right into it. There's a lot going on with the college football playoff. There's a lot going on in college football in general. And you know what? We might throw in an extra 30 minutes previewing the college football season about just random teams and random people and random schedules. Here's Josh. I really don't feel like he needs an introduction other than now he is not the king of his own household. So other than that, it is Josh Pate, some college football show out there with, I believe, him. I got a text from you the other day. You were listening to my radio show with McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, jocksfm.com, YouTube, 7 to 10 Central. I don't know how people can be on board with AQs as what's best for college football. Well, have me on. I'll lay it out in a surgical manner. Mm-hmm. So I don't have a scapula, but here, you can have these scissors. Get going. Perform surgery on me, please, sir.
I couldn't believe it. I was listening, and to be clear for the viewers out there, it was you, either you or someone in the studio had said, I don't know how someone can be for this. It was basically what you just read. And I was listening, and then I'll tell you how. And then you and I had a nice little productive conversation at the end of which you said, why didn't we just record this? Yeah. We're idiots. Why did we just do this on the phone? So let's do it. Okay. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about Iran. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the college football playoff. And we're talking about if they expand the whole thing, which is up in the air right now. Are you team AQ model or are you team 5+11 model? And then there's like a third kind of team.
It's 5-11, still AQ now, just not as many for each conference.
Yeah, I don't call that the AQ. I call that 5+11. I don't call that the AQ. And then there's a third group that's kind of, I just want to take the top 16. And for our purposes here, I lump them in with the 5+11.
Yeah,
crowd.
Just call us the wishful thinking group because it's never really going to happen. But it would be nice. But
all right.
Okay.
So I told you back in the day when we were at 4 teams and we first started to hear word that we may expand to 6 or 8. Like anytime someone talked about expansion, that was what it was. It was 6 or 8. And they would throw out all their designs and their ideas. And I always thought it was beyond stupid that people threw out these AQ concepts where you ought to take like the 5 conference champs and 1 at large. Because my thinking was, well, why don't you just take the 6 best teams? Or why don't you just take the 8 best teams? So then you fast forward all these years, and we never expanded to 6 or 8. We expanded to 12. And I was not a fan of it then. And I'm not a fan per se of expanding the playoff any further. But if I'm asking myself, all right, well, what do I want to accomplish? If this thing's going to expand, what do I want to accomplish? There's one thing I care about 10 miles above and beyond anything else in this sport, and that's the urgency of the regular season. What the Saturdays in the fall mean, because no other sport has that. So I come at this backwards. I'm not looking to build the best playoff model purely for the sake of that playoff model. I'm looking for the playoff model that gives me what I want in the regular season. Okay. Now go back to my old theory. My old theory was, dude, don't do AQs. No matter how big the field is, just take the best teams. Yeah. I never imagined the field would be this big. I never imagined the field would be double-digit teams. Naive of me, I know, but I never thought that would happen. And what we found is when you get into 12, much less 14 or 16, and you've got those at-large spots, we don't need to go back any further than last year to look what it does. Ohio State loses to Oregon. That's cool. You still got a shot, just no margin for error. Then you lose to Michigan at the end of the year. And yet you still get in and win the national championship. So what have you done? Well, you've removed, as it turns out, a whole lot of urgency and a whole lot of must-win, no safety net type vibes that were on those games. And I would imagine that would even further be exacerbated as the years went on. So I look at expanding to 16. I look at the 5+11 model. Let's just say that's what it is. And I think about a 9-1 Tennessee in the first week of November. Because I think you got to drill down on specific examples on this stuff instead of speaking in the abstract. Okay. Right. So let's say Tennessee or Auburn, pick the team, whoever. They're 9-1 going into the first week of November. In the 5+11 model, if you're 9-1, you got your FCS team still coming up. You got 2 conference games left. The first week of November you're in the playoff. There is no 9-3 SEC team that will ever be left out of a 16-team playoff. That a lot of them would make the 12 team, but they will not miss out on the 16-team playoff. So I'm thinking to myself, you're talking about language in early November that relates to playing for seeding. Yeah, Tennessee or Auburn still wants to win all the games. I'm not saying they don't. Think about the urgency on the games. It's a yeah, but. If they lose, it's a yeah, but. It's just seeding. And so then you look on the other side. Well, what's the alternative? How do you fix that, Josh? Well, you go the AQ route. You go the 4-4-2-2-1-1 route. Oh, but that's terrible because that guarantees the SEC this. That guarantees the Big Ten that. What does it guarantee teams? What does it guarantee that Tennessee team in this example, who is 9-1 in early November? It guarantees them absolutely nothing. And then if they win in week 12 and they're 10-1, they're still guaranteed nothing. And then if they lose, maybe final game of the year, maybe they finish 10-2, let's say, just on the outside looking into the SEC championship game, Cole, we've gotten to the end of the regular season. And if they're not playing in the conference championship game, they're still not guaranteed a playoff spot. Because the way that whole AQ thing works in the structure that they've presented is you've got your 1 and 2, and we can talk about the conference title game concept separately, but I assume that game will still exist, and I think you can heavily incentivize it to still exist and get max performance. But anyway, 1 versus 2 are playing in that conference championship game. Cole, they're the only 2 teams that have any guarantee at the end of the regular season. They know they're in the playoff. One of them's going to win the conference title and in all likelihood get one of the 2 byes that exist. The other one, though, even if they lose, the reward for making that conference title game is they are guaranteed a spot in the playoff. Outside of that, dude, everybody else, 3 plays 6, 4 plays 5 in your conference standings, of course. So that could be Tennessee, number 3, at home, hosting, let's say LSU, number 6. You got to win the game to get in. So I've gotten to the end. I've crossed the finish line, and I've still got a ton of urgency, not only on all the regular season games. You got to play in Saturday. You've got to win on that Saturday to even make the playoffs. So in a sense, it's almost like you have the playoffs starting at the conference level, and then they bleed up to the national level. And I prefer that tenfold over this world where you're just playing these games. If you've won early in the season, you're playing all your November games with a gigantic safety net under you. And another thing that you brought up the other day that I kind of wanted to circle back to, because I haven't heard this point made in a while. You said, yeah, but for all the teams that, as I said, are playing with a safety net, for all the teams that are, 10 wins, 2 weeks to go, and they know they're going to make the playoff, don't we have other teams that are on the bubble? Yeah, we do. So, but think about what we're talking about there. We're talking about removing the urgency from games featuring teams capable of actually winning the national title so that we can manufacture urgency, playoff implications, on the bubble implications for teams that are like Kansas State versus Iowa State at the end of the year. And yeah, there's urgency on that game. Yeah, they're on the bubble. No one in their right mind actually thinks those teams can win it all if they make the field. You actually think Ohio State can win it all. You actually think Alabama can win it all. And so I've always thought that was dumb, this argument that, oh, man, we've got more meaningful games. No, you've just taken the meaning that used to be on some games, and those games don't mean as much anymore because they know they're in, win or lose. And you kind of tried to manufacture this drama that's not really drama. It's not college basketball, man.
Are you kind of saying that meaning only lies with popular teams? No. It almost feels like that might be where you're going there, because we can't just put teams in because we think they can win it. We should put teams in based on how good they've proven to be in the regular season. As you stated, you want the regular season to stay where it means as much as humanly possible. I'm with you there, which is why I was for, and still always will be, even though it's not going to happen, put the 16 best teams in. Now, I get it. We have different power brokers. We have different people that can throw their weight around and drop elbows wherever they want. And that's fine. And that's just how the world works. I get it. But to sit there and say that Iowa State and BYU, who are both, we'll say, 2 lost teams, 2 really good losses, both have a chance to work their way into the playoff, that's not as meaningful of a game because they're not power programs or whatever at the time. And they're not going to bring the ratings or the eyeballs or whatever it is that Ohio State and Michigan's going to. So I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but it almost sounds like you're going down the path of lower tier teams that have better records or appear to maybe be better teams, not as important of a game as higher tier teams that have not had as good of a season.
No, what I'm talking about is a trade.
I know you're not. I'm just telling you, like, that's kind of the way it's coming off a little bit.
Okay, good. So then I can clean this up. So there is no world that exists where the games featuring the top 5 teams still have all the urgency in the world, and then we also get the urgency on the back end with teams that are floating in the 14 to 16 to 18 range. We had to accept a trade-off. So, like, for instance, last year, what that looked like is Ohio State knew they could go lose to Michigan and still get in. That's not to say the Ohio State-Michigan game meant nothing.
Sure.
But we understood they're still in. They're still in no matter what. Now, Ohio State, as it turned out, they were a team capable of actually winning the whole thing. So we know we're going to have that urgency somewhere. It's either A or B. And the smaller the field, the more likely it is to be on the teams that are capable of actually winning it if they get in. I'm saying it makes no sense to use this straw man defense mechanism of, hey, other games that used to not mean anything mean something now, when all we've really done is we've actually like shifted around the urgency. We took it away from the games featuring teams capable of winning if they get in, and we put it on other games. I don't care if it's a big brand. It could be Florida. It could be Alabama last year. Alabama was a terminally flawed team that was not winning the thing if they got in. But yet we had urgency on those games. Well, that's all well and good, but that Bama team wasn't capable of winning it all. Ohio State was. So I'm not the biggest fan of the proposition of manufacturing urgency on the Bama game as we took it off the Ohio State game, because that Ohio State game is actually higher stakes to me, because as we're mentioning the playoff as the context here, that Ohio State team is actually capable of winning something if they get in.
All right, let me go back here for a minute. You said if we go to 16, I really do feel like you and I can stop the charades. We both know it's going to 16, and we don't have to say how we know that or whatever, but we know it's going to 16. Last year, you said no SEC team 9-3 is not getting in a 16-team playoff. Georgia was 13-1. Missouri was 11-2. Tennessee was 9-4 with a playoff loss. You had Alabama at 12-2, Ole Miss at 11-2, LSU had finished 10-3. Like, all those teams are getting in last year?
Yeah.
That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams are getting in a 16-team playoff?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, let's not overlook, as I told you the other day, I think no one's paying attention to some of what Ross Dellinger's been reporting lately, which is congruent to this whole conversation. They're also talking about changing the parameters of strength of schedule and the metrics and how you grade teams. So all that means is in the future, there is a net bump to the positive for any given SEC resume. Like, no SEC resume is going to look worse with the new criteria.
Okay, so let's rewind for people that may not be keeping up here. Go back to what month were SEC meetings in? April?
Yeah,
whatever month that was.
Ago.
Okay, so take us back a week before that. It seemed like Tony Petitti, Greg Sankey were holding hands in line, walking down the path of 5 AQs SEC, 5 AQs Big Ten. Y'all dole out the rest. We really don't care because we know we should at least get that. To which I immediately said, yeah, most years you're probably going to have that. Some years you might have what we just described, 6 that deserve to get in. But I don't feel like you can definitively say that about either conference every year moving forward. There will be down years. There'll be other years that other leagues are better. So I wasn't a huge fan of it. I understand why it was probably going to happen. Then it felt like there was this big split. Is it safe to say that it's a possible theory that what you're referencing here, that there's some mathematician somewhere that wants a new algorithm to come out that would then favor teams, say, from the SEC, really, or the Big Ten, because the strength of schedule is always going to be better based on how they're going to work this metric, that, you know what, we don't need the 5 AQs because now teams with more losses from our league probably have a better chance of getting in.
Yes. This is what's happening. This is why it felt like there was this sudden pivot a couple of months ago. Because remember, everyone was all angry and torch and pitchfork. Shame on the SEC and the Big Ten. They want these 4 guaranteed spots. Well, then post-spring meetings, Greg Sankey kind of came out and said, yeah, we actually don't want that. We met with our coaches. They want the 5+11 model. Well, the reason they want that is because they were also presented a lot of the language about this new selection criteria and how they're going to have strength of schedule judged more favorably for them, which, by the way, I don't have a problem with because they should have that. That mechanism should be baked in, but they looked at it and said, whoa, well, we just did the math here. If we're going to 16, 14 or 16, why would we not want 5+11?
All right, hold on. So stop right here. Have it baked in. What ingredient is it? And that's the most important question here. Mm-hmm. Because if it's water, which essentially you can't bake a cake without, or eggs, then a lot of people are going to say that's too much. That's too important. That's too critical a part of the foundation of how a team should be judged. Not who they've played, but a math equation that tells us who they've played and how good they are. Other people might say, no, I mean, you and I have had this conversation as well. Like, everybody's pounding the table now, bring the BCS computers back. Folks, y'all hated the damn computers 10 years ago. Don't act like you liked them. You didn't like them. Everybody hated them. And now y'all want them back again. And they're going to come back and you're going to say, people should judge who our teams are best at. Computers can't watch games. So this circle of life of how we judge who's good, who's bad, I'm all for get as many ingredients as there as you can. But at the end of the day, the foundation of our cake, the foundation of our home, whatever that is that we're building or baking or making, it still needs to be eye test, in my opinion. And I want different people judging that. I don't all want 55 to 75-year-old former head coaches. It's fine if there's a lot of them. Like, I have told people on that committee for a long time, you're too old. Get a kid that just finished school so he can sit there and tell you, yeah, it's really not that hard to travel anymore. Like, we have planes. I don't know what y'all are talking about. Like, this time zone thing is not that big a deal. Like, and we have extra seats next to us, and the whole, like, they even bring us chips when we fly home.
Yeah, we also have machines in our building that shrink.
We have nap pods. I mean, like, what are we doing? So, yeah, I'm with you on that. And I think most people would be, but I think it's interesting when you say things like criteria or how they're going to now be judged, because I hear those triggers and they tell me, wait a minute, by how much are we using that? Because that can be problematic, in my opinion.
Well, so if I agree with what you're saying, but if I played devil's advocate, I would say, well, here's what's even more troubling. Here's what's even more problematic. If we got folks walking around like they're from the 1300s yelling, you are what your record says you are, and thinking there is no possible way on God's green earth that a 9-3 could be superior to 11-1 because no loss is ever better than a win. I had a guy come at me with that the other day. He said, Josh, doesn't it ultimately have to be about winning games? And I said, well, yeah, that's what determining a victor on Saturday centers around, like who has the bigger number on the scoreboard. But if you went and played a middle school team and I played the Patriots and I lost by 3 and you won by 3, I had the more impressive day. So we got to get a whole lot more granular in college football than, well, did you win or did you lose? That's how I determine that I won today. And within the confines of my league, that's how we determine conference standings. And no one ever pushes back on that. But when we're still accepting this ridiculous facade that 130 whatever teams are playing the same caliber football, then I've got to look at the Sun Belt standings and the Big Ten standings and acknowledge there may be a little difference in the 10-2s, relatively speaking. I did want to say one other thing.
The Castlevania Dragons back in the 1300s, by the way, they ain't played nobody.
Were they integrated, though? I don't even think they had integrated.
Great question. I'm not even really sure. I think they were over the scholarship limit every year, so it didn't really matter. A lot of walk-on. Hey, don't forget about our friends at Game Day Men's Health. All you got to do is go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com right now. Sign up for the free consultation. You get a free PSA test, free testosterone test. Find out where your baseline of health is, because if you are lacking sleep, if you are lacking energy, if you are feeling on edge, Game Day Men's Health can help you. Do you want to lose weight? There are multiple options at Game Day Men's Health to help you lose weight. Also now, peptides are in stock. They can get these things going to exactly what your body needs for different ailments. If it's sleep, if it's anti-aging, if it's arthritis, pain, they have all these different things that they can put together for you from a peptide perspective. Your body stops making these over time. They can explain it a lot better than I can. Just go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com. Sign up for the free consultation. Go in today. Tell them you heard about them right here on Cube Show and say, make me feel better, make me lighter, make me a better human. GameDayMen'sHealth.com.
You know, you said something a second ago. You said you wanted the 16 best in. And I told you the other day, well, I disagreed with that because I thought it ran counter to what my goal is, which is to have urgency on the regular season. And so like you were pushing back and you said, all right, but from a principled standpoint, how do you not just want to get the best teams in? And I said, I'm glad you brought it up because I had never had to verbalize my feeling on it. But the way I told you is, I don't care about getting the 16 best in. I care about getting the 6 to 8 best teams in, because past that, you're probably not looking at teams capable of winning the thing. So I'm going to get the 6, 7, or 8 best in. However many teams you think are capable of winning it in a given year. Let's call it 8 to be ultra conservative. Past that, I don't really care. It's semantics to me. I care about the structure of postseason that gives me the best regular season. There's no proposal I've seen that would exclude the 5, 6, 7, or 8 best teams in the country from making any of these fields. Those teams are going to make every field. So,
totally fair.
Yeah, that was the other thing that I wanted to say.
So what is it then coming down to? Is it more inclusion? Is it more greed from greed per conference? What are we missing there then with not being able to agree on something where at the end of the day, after 6, 8, it doesn't really matter? Follow-up question to that, which might be a separate episode. Who would be the teams in our lifetimes that would have been out of that threshold in the middle of November that could have won a national championship? That's an awesome question, by the way.
Like yeah.
Lamar Jackson, Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
Manziel, A&M. It's going to be mostly like people who carried teams. Yep. I'm just trying to think of teams that did things in a different way that you just kind of couldn't do anything about, but maybe like that. What was the USC team with Bradford, I think, or Barkley, whichever one it was, it got hot late and it was them versus Oklahoma State to get in. Maybe I can't, my brain doesn't work that well, but that'd be a cool test, like a cool case study on what teams were maybe outside the top 8 mid-November that if we had this format now and they did get in, could potentially go win it.
You know what? The other thing I wonder about, not to get too far off the beaten path here. So the whole Saban run was crazy. But what I thought was all the more crazy was looking at the years they didn't win it and what it took to eliminate them, in other words, in the years where they didn't win it. And then looking at that against the backdrop of a 14 or 16 team field. Well, of course, Saban's Bama teams are in every playoff every year. Their worst year was that 2010 team is in. The team a couple of years ago that finished like 11th or 12th, they're in. So they're all in. I wonder, does he have a net more or less?
The 2010 team, I can remember, sorry to interrupt you, I can vividly remember listening to a conversation on Game Day talking about the 2010 Iron Bowl, and I think it was Kirk and maybe somebody else making the argument that if Alabama won, they should be in. And that was the BCS, guys. That was 2 teams that were playing for it. But like you said, they had some really good wins that year too. And then if they got what was looking like a top 2, 3 Auburn team, whatever they were at the time, so that would be an example. Maybe not outside the top 8 very often, but 100%, I could see that.
So you think, I was listening to you talk the other day. You were talking about conference championship games. You don't think that they're going to be around much longer, do you?
I do not. No. First off, I don't know how. How do you keep them relevant? And you've heard Kirby Smart like I have 2 of the last 3 years. What did he said in that press conference the day before? Why are we here? We're in. I mean, somebody's got to tell me why we're doing this. We get a banner. Great. I'd rather my team be fresh.
Yeah.
And I'd rather my team be ready, because the ultimate goal at the end of the day. Now, if this is my era, Southeastern Conference, I don't think anybody's even dreaming of that question, because most of us would have rather won an SEC championship, because the national championship seemed so distant and so many different stars had to align and different bowl games had to be in or out of how they were going to work out. It was all that. But now that's not what it is. So I don't know how you keep a conference championship game on that day relevant with those teams in it, that all they're essentially doing is somebody at least is hurting their standing. You're almost guaranteed. Yeah. Unless we get like that Lamar Louisville team or like a 4-loss Manziel team that's in there. Okay, you get to play your way in. But so we're getting away from it.
I think this may be where there's a separation of how the Big Ten / SEC handle their business versus everyone else. Like, for instance, not that I don't have time to lay it all out for you, nor do I have the notebook paper, but in the format I want, like the 14-team AQ format, there's the play-in Saturday concept. In the Big Ten and the SEC, what that looks like is 1 versus 2 in their conference title games, and then 6 goes to 3 and 5 goes to 4. Only 2 guaranteed spots are with the teams that are playing in the conference title game. The winner of that conference title game gets probably a first-round bye. Like, the Big Ten and SEC champs are probably the ones that get the 2 first-round byes in the playoffs. So there's maximum reason to want to win that conference title. And even the team that lost, they knew before they kicked the ball off for the game that they're in. So there was motivation to make it. But then at the same time, if you look at the model I laid out, well, the ACC only gets 2 guaranteed spots. The Big 12 only gets 2 guaranteed spots. So either that is their conference title game where 1 plays 2, there's probably not a first-round bye on the line, and there probably is no motivation, or we just crown the regular season conference champ like they do in basketball, and then have 1 play 4 and 2 play 3 to take their 2 guaranteed spots. So I
love what you're doing here. You're removing the NCAA thought process into the college football player process. Because what does the NCAA always do? Not think things through, make rules, and then they're always back-channeled, backdoor, underbelly shows up, and, oh, wow, we didn't think of all that. Mm-hmm. It's a really intriguing way to think of it. So if you're the ACC, well, if we name our regular season champion our conference champion, they're in. And then we let these other 2 teams play, or we take even our next best team and say, well, we would also like for them to be in. 2 teams that maybe not even be guaranteed a spot at that point, go play in your whatever you want to call it. ACC might get into the playoff game of the day. And I mean, imagine if you had 2 teams in and you sit 1 and 2 and you say, no, 3 and 4 are going to play because we know at least one of them is going to improve their standing and give themselves a better chance to get in. We're probably eliminating 1. Okay. Yeah. But we're going a lot further to ensure that a 3rd team's also good. Like, gaming the system is going to become a real thing after this all starts to move a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's why I don't want any at-large spots, by the way. That the 14-team model has no at-large spots, which also is the only way a play-in Saturday makes sense. You can't call a play-in game if I could lose it and still make the playoff. So, like, I keep on seeing these 16.
What if you're both playing to get in, though?
But how that is the concept of a play-in game. That's how I want
play out game. I mean, someone can get in.
Yeah, someone's making it and someone's going home. That's what I want all that Saturday.
I'm playing to get in.
Saturday games. I'll do what?
You're playing to get in.
You're playing to get in, and you're losing to go home.
But you're saying it's not a play-in game. If we have 2 teams that are 8 and 4, and neither are going to be in based on our conference legislation or whatever it is. But it looks like if one of you goes and wins this game, you're going to leapfrog yourself into a chance to make it.
Oh,
then it's a play-in game.
No, what I'm saying, so what I'm doing with the ACC, like they know they have 2 spots in the playoff. What I'm saying is I don't even think they should have a conference championship game. I think they ought to just toss the Burger King crown to whoever had the best record in the season. But I think they ought to have 4 play 1 and 3 play 2, and the winners of those games go. Here's the problem with that. Many problems, depending on your perspective. But even a problem that I admit is that puts your conference champ in a situation where if they lose a game on that Saturday, they're going home. I look at that and I say, so win the game. You're going to have it at home. So Clemson's going to have like Louisville come into their building, win the game. Win the game. I'd say the same thing to the SEC's number 3 team or the Big Ten's number 3 team. Yeah. They had a great year. They're clearly one of the 16 best teams in the country. Okay. But for the sake of the urgency that I want on the regular season, we need this model wherein you could lose on the first Saturday in December and your season be done. Win the game.
It's a lot to think about how that day could turn into maybe even more than one game per league. You have some sort of a doubleheader.
I think it could be, if you do have your conference championship games in the SEC and Big Ten, you've got 3 games to play. You got 3 games to play because you're guaranteeing the 1 and 2 make it. So both participants in that conference title game make it. But 3 versus 6 and 4 versus 5, like that's 3 games. Now, if you don't have your conference title game, that's still 2 games for each of those big leagues.
Absolutely. And so let's move forward here, because you would agree with me though that it's not going to be long before a just classic conference title game is dead.
I'm not there with you yet. I'm not there with you yet, only because of how I'd love to say because of the spirit of college football and how important they are. In real life, it's how much money is tied into those games. Now, if they replace that value or even go above and beyond that value with substituting that one game for 2 play-in games and they're happy with that, then who knows? Maybe they scrap it. I just don't. The
value is replaced by better standing in the larger playoff with your better teams.
But I don't. I'm just telling you, I do not. I ask when I can about this stuff, and the sentiment is not as clear cut on the decision making side of the aisle as you make it sound. I'm just telling you, you're gonna have to rip those conference championship games out of their hands.
Yeah, I'm not saying you're ripping the day away, but the old-fashioned, the winner of this game has the banner and gets the rings for winning our league, 1 and 2, or just 2 teams. I think that's gone. I think that's going to be gone at some point in the very near future, because it's not going to be financially, maybe, but I think there are workarounds financially to make sense of it and how it will operate. As you stated, 2 games almost as good could mean more financially. What do we always talk about with these networks? Inventory. Yep. Give me inventory, man. You give me a doubleheader that day and I can go from noon to 8. All right, now we're cooking. I can probably make that worth your while financially. Dr. Pepper will step up and Mr. Pibb will step up and Mountain Dew will step up.
Academy will step up. Zevia will step up. Yeah.
Yes. Royal Buick GMC will step up. Your
Nichols
CBD store
will step up. Yeah.
Yes. Wickles will be there handing out samples to all of it. And then we go see Game Day Men's Health after that. Where is Notre Dame in all of this? Because even in our conversation the other day, you and I didn't bring this up. And here's where I think it is a worthwhile talking point. We know that there's always this little like 1 over here to the side, like 2 + 2 = 4, but sometimes 5. Yep. And so when I ask this question, I think the only answer I really need is, where's the cutoff going to be with Notre Dame? Because and I'm not saying that they don't deserve this. I'm not saying that this doesn't make sense. They got to be involved. They just have to be. They're too important to all of college football. I can respect that, know that, believe that, and I can voice that. But where will the cutoff be? Because it feels like even though it's not all right, you walk over this line, you're out. 4 losses, 3 losses, whatever that is, don't win the league, lose the play-in game, all that. Like, it feels like there's going to be this massive gray area with Notre Dame, mainly because your seat is not taken. Like, we're just saving it for you.
Yep.
Like, the new girl's not coming in taking the hot girl seat at the lunch table. But if she doesn't show up 10 consecutive days, she might go sit there. So I don't know if Meemaw would approve of that analogy. I tried. But will there be a cutoff, and how pissed off are the other teams' leagues, maybe more important, going to be when all of a sudden 4 losses Notre Dame's getting in, or 3 losses Notre Dame against a weaker schedule is viewed not to be in, but we saved that seat for them. So we kind of always feel like they should be there. We don't want to make them mad. Can't make them mad. Like, how do they work in all of this?
I think it's going to be as simple as if you go 5 plus 11, it's a moot point. They're just gunning for one of the at-large spots, or I don't even know how that would work. But even in the AQ models, they've always got that one spot saved for them. So however big your playoff is, if it's 16 teams per se, I think it's as simple as Notre Dame's in as long as they're in the top 16, which in a roundabout way is the most basic math imaginable. But rubber meeting road, it means they need to win 3/4 of their games every year on a schedule that they totally control. They got to win 9 games. A 9-3 Notre Dame's always going to be in the top 16. Therefore, they're in the playoff. I think it's as simple as that.
What is doomsday down the road for Notre Dame? I love this question because I've thought it out and I've had conversations about it. And I can foresee something like the SEC and the Big Ten saying, not playing you anymore. You'll get no non-con games with us. And they'll say, cool, we got the ACC. Well, if the ACC gets cherry-picked down the road, then what happens? Where does it finally run into a wall in all of this for Notre Dame, if it ever does? It might not. And also, is Notre Dame trying to throw any weight around here? Because they got shafted last time. Not going to get that bye like other teams were going to get. But then they would tell you, don't have to play on championship Saturday. Well, now we might not even have championship games. So you lose that advantage that you had before.
They already did. They just threw their weight around. I mean, that clause you're talking about lasted a grand total of 1 or 2 cycles. And then to get the concessions that they needed for this upcoming year, to get this signature on the paper from Notre Dame, you had to come off that. So they're eligible for a bye this upcoming season in this 12-team format. I think the answer to your question about what would be the doomsday scenario would be if the SEC and Big Ten, it would be a 2-step process. First step is the SEC and the Big Ten gobble up all the value properties from the ACC and whatever is left
Big
out
12,
there. Really.
There's a couple probably.
And there is no quote unquote major conference outside of the Power 2 left. And then they dictate, neither of us, we are colluding against you. Neither of us are going to play you, and we're doing our own thing. But I think about that, and is that really something that the SEC and the Big Ten would ever want to work in conjunction for? Because the whole time, what you're really trying to do is press Notre Dame to join a conference. Well, does the SEC really want to collude with the Big Ten if the net result is the Big Ten then acquires Notre Dame? Notre Dame's not joining the SEC, I wouldn't think. So I don't really know what the doomsday. I think they got it pretty good right now.
Yeah, it's almost when you start talking it out and thinking about it, there's more of you that says there isn't one.
Yeah,
there's not really a doomsday scenario because you kind of need, you don't have to have them, but you want them involved in no matter what it is. Even if they're in that other league, boy, there could be some national championship games that are well worth all of this and going to be worth even more the next time around. Or if you did get them in your league, man, we get them against them and them and them and them and them every year. Oh, okay, we'll take that. Yeah, absolutely. So I look at that and just kind of wonder where it all is and where it's going to go. But we're in an interesting spot. Hopefully it ends up being a net positive for college football. And that's the part that you and I talked about that a lot of folks don't understand. There is no one in place. And obviously you have nominated yourself at least daily for the last, I think, 1,300 days.
At least.
To take that spot. And it's hard for people to separate that certain individuals are not responsible for the greater good of the sport that we love so much. They have to take care of said entity that writes their checks first. And that makes perfect sense. But we're getting further away from it feeling like it's a collective mindset of protecting all of it. And I know it's something you don't like, and it's definitely something I don't like.
Yeah. It's also why, whether it's the whole house settlement thing or whether it's what we're talking about now, I've looked at it, and I mean, I'm the last, I'm the last person on the face of the earth that says, hey, federal government, come help us over here. But because of the dynamic that exists in college athletics, because there is no one looking out for that thing, for the entity as a whole, it's probably one of the few sectors of things I care about in life and society where I say, probably going to need federal government to come over here and help us a little bit. Basically, save them from themselves is what I'm trying to say. It would be funny if these people were pressed and it was like an either or. Either you have centralized authority over there, a commissioner, or we're coming in. Maybe that's how you light a fire under these.
And I think that's what's unfortunate. When you were beginning stating that, I was on a Big Boo cast, my friends Melanie and Sophie yesterday, and they asked me about portal and other things, like how do you fix all this and what do you do? They had a conversation with a former Hall of Fame baseball player that he was pushing for 2-year contracts for everybody, which we could go into the good and bad with all that. My thought was, well, you're almost encouraging them to leave. But that, like, if you say 2, you're saying, well, just give us 2, and then we really don't care what you do, instead of saying, we think you should be here for 4 or 5, even though it's not the reality of it. But I said, lawsuit. Yeah. It's that simple. And there are a lot of people that come to me with great ideas. Man, wouldn't this work? Don't you think we could do that? And I'll say, lawsuit. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're going to get sued.
Hey, let me tell you something. All right. You think about I-65, lemonade stand in the middle of it. Thoughts. I love it. I love cars. I love lemonade. I love it. Lawsuit, or worse. Street pizza is probably what you turn into. But look, the thing you're saying is, so I've already gotten myself past the point of, I just tell everyone, oh, that'll be a lawsuit. That'll be a lawsuit. Where I'm at is, well, it's a lawsuit unless they get antitrust exemption.
Well, I was going with that was, I think I've convinced myself now that the only real saving grace in all of this is the government. And I, like you, do not feel great saying that. Don't want to say that.
Yeah.
But hell, I don't know another scenario that exists that can make this work without being sued again.
That's 2 areas that I have found myself like inverting my entire thought paradigm. Whether it's the concept of AQ structure in a playoff, I used to be wholesale against it. Now I'm kind of low key for it. The federal government intervening for the betterment of college athletics, that would be like an antithetical statement to me on the surface up until the past 3 or 4 years. It's where, like, you don't want to call out to your big brother for help. But if you've fallen down a mine shaft, there's no other way out. You got to call on big brother to come help you. And you guys can talk or not once he pulls you out, but you're not getting out any other way.
Right. It's a lot, man. But it's I wanted to kind of share this conversation with both of our listeners because it was a great conversation we had, a lot of different directions. And I thought we disagreed on a lot of things, but then we ended up kind of coming back to saying, yeah, that might actually be better anyway, or that actually could work also. So we'll see where it's going. We both think it's going to expand at some point. I want to leave you with this. As we now begin the path to media days, there's no more College World Series. There's no more NBA. We are literally just stuck here with regular season Major League Baseball. Give me your 1 or 2 things, any league, any team, any player, any coach that you're kind of sitting on right now thinking, man, I can't wait to get to media days for this. Either talk to this person, hear from this person, want to know about something, learn something about somebody, whatever that is, outside of being asked to join 77 podcasts a day.
Including yours. I want to know, at the SEC media days, I want to know what the addition of Ben Arbuckle has been at Oklahoma at as granular a level of detail as possible. Because anyone can, I got one right here, anyone can pick up like a preview magazine, Hat Tip Lindy's, and it can just say, you got like a paragraph. You got like a couple of sentences that everyone just keeps regurgitating. Oh, they got Mateer and Arbuckle. They'll be good to go. I may even believe that, by the way. That's not detail. Like, you talk to a ton of coaches. I can tell you what raised my antenna. When Oklahoma hired him, I had a couple of defensive coaches reach out and they said, what do you know about that guy? They were like testing me. I said, truthfully, not a whole lot. And they said, you need to learn that name. That's one, like, he's the real deal. They just made a really good move. They were basically asking, like, are you media guys making a big deal about him? Because most of the guys you guys pump, we think are laughable. But this dude, you're making no big deal about him at all. He's the real deal. So I'm excited about that.
But it's also, you can make a big deal about him, but it's also he and Mateer together. Yes. It's similar last year after the season when everybody said, go pay Pavia $1 million. I know he doesn't know who you are. However, I tried to tell people, you understand that's not going to work without Tim Beck. and his former head coach. Like, that is a combo deal that works as a transformer, not as an individual. Like, they have to be Voltron to work. They're not individual robots kicking ass on their own. That's not how it's going to go. I think that's the reason that so many people who have seen it all and know a little bit about it are that excited. I'm with you on Oklahoma. That's kind of mine. And I had this conversation with some friends. I was like, y'all got to know how to read between the lines here. You're not going to get anything in the open right at you, but you have to understand how to, you got to know how to translate the language. And I mean, you can go 100 different ways with this. Coach gets up there and tells you he's been a good teammate. I'm worried. Very concerned.
Yeah.
Guy's good teammate. Shows up, does what we ask him to do, smile on his face. No. Cancel every bet, get away from it, run as fast as you can. Now, they come in kind of downplaying it a little bit, and you hear, some kind of sly words about how we've had to change the defense a little bit. And, this guy, you start hearing other names that are performing well around him on the offense. Now I'm kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
Didn't expect to hear that. Like, I'm paying attention a little bit. All right, you guys have heard me tell you about Pizza Pulls on the Whatnot app. Boom. Get your phone right there. Go to the Whatnot app. Click it. Comes up there. Go find my guys at Pizza Pulls. Go to search. Go either Pizza Pulls or go right in there to Pizza Breaks. Bam. There they are right now. What do we got going here? Break a little college basketball. Got some Cooper Flag going. Bowman Chrome U. Go in and get that. Get a Cooper Flag autograph. You can get that right now. Should we bid right now? Who we got going here? What are we bidding on? Can't even get in there right now. I break football cards every Tuesday. Getting into some baseball here soon as well. If you're getting back into the hobby, football cards, baseball cards, basketball cards, maybe Pokemon, golf, they got the Live golf cards from Panini Prism, all right there at Pizza Pulls. You can even find them on fanaticslive.com. Go to Whatnot every Tuesday around 11 a.m. I'm breaking football cards. We'll have some more coming up this week. You can find it on my Instagram at Cole Cubelic. I'm going to tweet the link out as well from Cube Show. You'll find me there. Get in with me and get it back into the hobby at Pizza Pulls.
I'm going to tell you another one. I don't know, like on your TV at media days, how it'll sound, but Kirby is probably the most brutally honest coach in this conference. When you talk to him about his team, he is brutally honest. And I mention that because this time last year, they were the consensus number one. Carson Beck was the consensus favorite to win the Heisman. And you get some dirty looks if you suggested anything other than they were going to breeze through the SEC. They'll be in Atlanta and win it, which ironically they did. And then they're the favorite to win the national title. And I know that because I didn't think as highly of Georgia going into last year. The reasons cause of what their head coach had told me. Like, I was relying on feedback from Kirby Smart, and it wasn't like it was private. Like, some of it was. But many, many parts of it he had said publicly. It's just people didn't want to listen to it. So now we fast forward a year, and I wonder, he's smart enough to know if his team is a little bit maybe a rung down from the expectation ladder, he knows to go ahead and proactively chop down the expectations, or else it makes him look foolish and them look foolish later on. So, like, how does he sound about their ability to run the ball or their ability to play defense the way they want to? He, when we visited with him in the spring, like, he was so emphatic about how much his two deep is littered with first-year guys that would never have been the case 4 years ago. So do you just rigidly stick to the way you've always done things? Or do you maybe have some concessions here or there? Do you bend a little here and there? Because that's easy to do for a coach that's really young. It's a lot tougher to do for a dude who's really set in his ways organizationally.
To your point, when he was with us at the Regions Championship, the golf tournament here, Greg asked him about Gunnar Stockton, and he immediately went Puglisi and started talking about him. Like, skipped right over him and said, well, hold on now. Ryan's been doing this, been doing that. This kid been this. And I was like, okay, hold on a second now. Like, we may have been having the wrong conversation for a little while. And I'm not saying that it's definitely going one way or the other way, or it's not what it looks like, but I feel like that was him saying, I will stick my hand in this door and risk a broken arm to not allow that to be slammed shut just yet. Like, it's not happening. The other thing that I feel like I know, I don't really know if I know about Kirby is the more detailed he is about his complaints of his team, the more he likes his team. So if he gets to media days and he starts giving you individual things in coverage that really piss him off, and we got guys that when we're in the boundary and we're in man coverage and these guys don't know how to flip their hips and read a receiver, like he loves his team. Mm-hmm. If it's more grand scope of things that you might not like very much, and then I'm kind of like, okay, maybe we should be a little concerned about that. But when it's like detailed complaints, I'm like, oh boy, watch out for that group.
Yeah, if it's detailed complaints, he is quite literally exhausting the list of gripes.
He's making it sound like he doesn't like them. What he's trying to do. So I love playing these mind games with these coaches, trying to figure out what they really are telling us and not telling us and what they think and don't think. It's great. I love it.
Dude,
but we both want to know about Oklahoma. And all Venables is going to get up there and do it and just read the roster. He's going to give us 87 names. When you ask him about one guy, he's going to literally go down the whole list.
So 87 names will take him about 13 seconds. So then what does he do with the rest of his time? That is Jimbo Fisher. I don't think that his records of like tempo speaking will ever be touched in this conference. But Brent Venables is competitive.
He was at the desk with us last year, and I forget who asked him the question. And it was about something on defense. And I mean, he named at least 40 kids. and Roman just sat back in his chair and Roman said, Coach, I had a question for you, but honestly, like, I'm so impressed that you know that many guys' names on your football team. I don't really know what to ask you anymore. That was just super impressive that you were able to do that.
When we went there this spring, it was the first time I have met Brent Venables in person. Okay. Now, instantly, like, he's the kind of guy you feel like you've known for a long time. I asked him a question. He gave me an 18-minute, 53-second answer. We have him for an hour, which is an eternity for one-on-one time with a head coach. And he's not even trying to filibuster. And I'm looking at Mike, the SID there off on the side, and he looked at his watch like 7 times. He could not believe, that's a record even by Brent Venables standards.
I think in our TV meetings, we usually get a good 2, maybe 3 questions.
Yeah.
And those, like you said, those are usually going 45, 50 minutes. And it's just like
amazing.
He just goes. He sits back and then he starts. And it's just like, man, that was a lot more than I ever bargained for. But thank you. I'm appreciative of it. So, yeah, it'll be fun. I think because when you're talking about SEC media days, so many teams that could be and maybe won't be. Not winning a national title, but might be 9, might be 10. Could be 6, could be 7.
You're talking about half a dozen teams in this league. You just described half a dozen teams or more in this league.
More than 6. It's like 8 or 9. Easy. Because I can nitpick. I can take LSU and I can say your 2 best players on LSU is not one of those people wouldn't normally put them in that category. Your 2 best players on defense are coming back from injury. You lost both your tackles. You got a great quarterback. You refused to hand the football off last year. Are you going to do that this year? I have no idea. Great group of receivers, but at some point you got to have some balance. So that's just my little quick. South Carolina, one of those teams. Takeover player at quarterback, takeover player at defensive end. Lost a lot of dudes that played an absolute ton of college football. Yep. And the value in that right now is huge, exponential. So Auburn's one of those teams, I think. Oklahoma's one of those teams. Florida's one of those teams. Ole Miss, one of those teams. I mean, it's like the whole league.
Who isn't?
A&M, definitely one of those teams.
List the teams that are not one of those teams.
Texas is not one of those teams. Texas is not losing 3.
All right, so I am, in the interest of chaos, the other day I'm doing a show that emanates out of Birmingham. One of the fine, upstanding young men on that program says, hey, Texas is going to be 3-2 come Red River. And I said, well, are you high? And then said, no, I'm serious. Like think about it. So Oklahoma's going to be undefeated. Texas is going to be 3-2. And I got off of it. Like I looked, and Texas is a dog at Ohio State week 1. Texas will be a short favorite against Florida the week before Red River. Could easily be a 2-loss team. OU has every game aside from an egregious trip to Temple at home. They play Michigan and Auburn. Those are the 2 big games. That scenario sounds like it's out of left field. It came from Mars. 5-0 OU versus 3-2 Texas going into Dallas is not this crazy, outrageous concept. And the point there is obviously you just mentioned Texas immediately as, oh no, they're a known commodity. Yeah, but are they fully a known commodity?
Ooh. I understand the Florida part, and there's a lot that I like about Florida this year, but you've seen that. You've seen the steps to the top of that ladder, right?
Mm-hmm.
South Florida, who's going to be really good this year, at LSU, at Miami, then Texas. So it's not like they're just, ring around the rosy right into that game.
Yep. Here's the problem for Texas. That, in all likelihood, either makes Florida the surprise team of the year if they're undefeated.
So, if you're Texas, though, this is exactly where you want to get Ohio State.
Yes,
you got a new quarterback, a new offensive coordinator, essentially. You're replenishing half your offensive line. Your defensive line lost a bunch of playmakers. There's a lot of new there. You got some new, not that you don't, but I just don't look at that game as a massive disadvantage game for Texas. I think Texas is good enough to where they're not going to lose both of those games.
It's not a massive disadvantage game, but I'd flip that and I'd say if I'm Ohio State, when do I want to play Texas this year at home? It's the same story. The point is,
at home, I would just maybe rather play them week 8 or 9, so I know who I am and what I got.
Yeah, maybe, but they don't know who they are yet either. But the point there is, no game's going to be a massive disadvantage game for Texas. They're Texas. Yeah. I'm talking about two very, very losable games, and you're breaking in a new quarterback, whether he's a true freshman or not. Of course he's not, but their toughest games are all away from Austin. They got to go to Athens later in the year, but you're talking about playing in Columbus early. You're talking about playing in Gainesville early. Tough hotel situation for Texas right now. Just inside info there. And then they go to Dallas.
Starkville.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just telling you, I don't even look at Texas as a for sure known commodity this year. I don't think there is one in the country. Penn State is the known commodity team out there, and they've not gotten over the hump in a big game in I don't know how long.
I just think at some point when you're talking about these if, ands, and buts, you got to sit back and say, all right, do you have real confidence in that football team? I have real confidence in Texas.
Oh, I've got confidence in them. I'm telling you, out of the relative speaking category, Texas is the team.
So I'll tell you my concern with Texas is, and we saw this last year. What did Georgia do to Texas?
Well, they bullied them in Austin.
But I'm saying, when you broke down the game, the aspect of the game that Texas did not deal with extremely well. My thought on that when I watched it, I was like, especially the first one. Georgia went in that game and said, let's see how rugged you are, dude. Yeah. Let's find out. And they weren't in that game. And a little bit more in the second game, and obviously some different things happened, whatever. But, Georgia was a more rugged team. So I look at this and I say, all right, you better be able to bring a little backyard brawl if you're going to beat that football team. Because playing a little bit gritty, dirty, and I'm not talking about against the rules. That's not what I mean there. But that's the kind of so who on that schedule is that team? You're talking all these games. Who are the gritty teams that can give Texas problems? Ohio State played like that for 3 games last year.
Yeah, and all those.
And they were the last 3 games of the year. So I don't know if they're going to be that week 1. Florida ready to be that kind of team?
That's the team I'd circle as the one I want to see.
Up front on offense, yes. Jaden Baugh, yes. Lagway, yes. I don't know on defense outside of Caleb Banks if they are. I mean, I like a couple of the guys up there, but I don't know all around if they're that. So, you know who might be next in line in that group is Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
They'll fight your ass. They don't care. I mean, Georgia's that team. But my point is, it doesn't look like everybody can talk about these if, ands, maybes, buts, all these things on that schedule. Styles make fights and matchups are critical. There's not a lot of teams that with how they play look bad on paper for Texas right now, in my opinion.
Fair. We're going to come away from this and someone will have watched it calling me a Texas doubter, and I'm not doubting them.
Yeah,
I just don't view them as some.
You just said they're going to be 3-2, maybe even 2-3 heading into Red River. So.
All I'm saying is this right here does things to people. Hold on. They didn't pay for this. There we go. This right here does things to people.
Here's a fun question. Hold on. Keep that up.
This is how we do graphics.
You're
That's
welcome.
how we do graphics on this show
all we
now.
can
This is
afford.
pathetic.
This is all I can afford right here. Honestly, I want your honest opinion. You get 5 seconds to think this out. No more. What team on that list do you like the most? No circumstantial bullshit. I want just the one. You don't get to if all this other. What team do you like the most on that list right now? Okay. Mine's sitting at number 4.
You know what? I want to change my pick. I want to go with you. I want to go Clemson.
I am that convincing of a human being. I know it.
I want to get, I actually put him number 1 in my own personal rankings that had nothing to do with you. I just forgotten about it.
Wait, I thought they weren't rankings. I thought it was a poll.
I in season do ratings. This was the one time that I do rankings. Hey, if that happens, first off, how does Dabo not drop the mic and walk away? Secondly, do you understand? This hold
on. $10 million a year.
What is money? What is money? Hey, the other part about that is you're telling me Dabo's not going to find someone to pay him roughly that to talk for a living?
By the way, how much more fun? Like Dabo is basically untouchable now.
Yeah.
How much fun would like complete Teflon bat suit Dabo be if he won another title? Like
that's what I'm saying.
He can't leave if he wins it because we need that guy in college football to just basically tell everybody else to go do their own thing in the nicest way possible.
He would walk in rooms and not even have to say anything. It would just be the look of it's the biggest I told you so that I remember in the recent history of sports, period. Like, where's the bigger I told you so than that guy not bending, just not even flinching, and the entire world changes around him, and he just chills on the beach, and then, tide came in again.
Everybody told him he was like the crazy dude in class and like would never amount to anything. Like, God, don't talk to that guy. He's a nut. Like stay away from him. And he invents Apple if he wins this national championship.
No, I mean, of course, Louisville could run it up on him again at home like they did last year or something like that. So it's not a guarantee, but I do agree with you. They finally, them and Penn State, finally, this is not a fair comparison. Clemson has been great at receiver before. Penn State never has. But they both addressed their wide receiver rooms, Penn State for the first time, Clemson for the first time in a few years, to where I don't look at it and say, there's the terminal flaw.
God, 2 games, man.
Yeah,
at Boston College is always tricky, no matter what. No matter who. At Georgia Tech is tough. Brent's going to have that team pretty solid this year.
Yep. That's my sleeper.
But at Louisville, at South Carolina late, I didn't see the Georgia Tech game on the road early. That's a tough one. Is that one at the Dot or is that one in the Dome?
No, I can't
keep up with where they're playing.
They sold out and took the Georgia game to the Dome, but I think they are. I mean, they're going to do this radical concept of playing a game in their home stadium against Clemson. You do understand that Tech's 2 biggest games are Georgia and Clemson, each in Atlanta. And outside of that, they'll be favored in their other 10. And no one outside of me, frankly, is talking about them as a contender in the ACC.
That offense is going to be rolling this year. That week 1 game is going to be fun with them, too, at Colorado. That's going to be fun. I'm excited about that one.
Yeah.
At Wake, at Duke, at NC
Are we
State.
doing a full season preview?
Yeah,
is that what this is?
All of it. We're going Sunbelt next. Get ready.
Week 9, 10 biggest games. Go.
Your top 25 heading into November. Ready? Go. Backwards.
Let's talk early favorites in the FCS playoff picture.
I got North Dakota State and South Dakota. Who you got?
I got South Dakota State and North Dakota State. That was always a fun bet.
Iowa, Montana.
Iowa took the quarterback from South Dakota State, and truthfully, never watched him play much, but producer Jesse has a ton of faith in him. So we're big on Iowa's offense this year.
Well, speaking of faith in producer Jesse, at your wedding, I asked him one question. Actually, my wife asked him the question. She goes, when are you going to talk to Josh about how to make your podcast better? And I kind of
wow.
Said, what? And I said, well, 1, he's getting married. I'm not going to bother him with that. 2, he ain't the guy to ask. And she said, what? And I said, you see that guy that looks like he's an overweight member of a boy band? That's the guy to ask. Right,
the guy over there in the rented tuxedo, that's the one I need to talk to.
I said, he's the one that makes the show go. So my wife being my wife, she walked up and she asked him, and he goes, "I think you need more guests."
Wow.
And I said, "Are you saying that the guest I have on is not good?"
Different guest or more guests?
So
Jeez.
Mission accomplished, Jesse. How do you like it? All right, thanks, man. That was awesome. Seriously, I could just keep going and just like go into NC State's defensive line, but
it's a real slippery slope. I do some 15-minute radio hits that are like Chinese water torture, and if we didn't stop right now, we're recording this at night. If we didn't stop right now, you just go for 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I would probably just go straight to the studio after this and be like, "Greg, here we're just gonna do the same thing again. Get ready. Here we go."
All right, I'm hanging up.
Goodbye.